It was completely uncharted territory that I never would have imagined myself going in that direction had I not been put in a position where it was like, what am I gonna do? The writing was on the wall that this was gonna drastically impact a lot of people, including myself.
You had a really good first year. Most people aspire to make $100,000. You're able to do that in your first year.
Things that are more expensive, they're typically higher in value. And so if you want a very low premium, so you're trying to save money in your monthly expenses, generally speaking, you're gonna have a higher deductible. I have control over that. My schedule, my time with my family, my kids, prioritizing my health and things like that that I would not have at a traditional job. I never would have taken a leap to go into a business, an industry that one, I was unfamiliar with, two, that's commission only. I might be quoting you a plan that's $800-900 for your family, and then the family next door might be paying $250 for their plan. If I didn't do what I did, I don't know if I'd be where I'm at. Hi, my name is Caitlin Witte, and I'm with Your Health Coverage Concierge, and this is the Last Dollar Show.
Caitlin, you've been a great referral partner for my insurance business. I'm really excited to have you on the show. You know, there's been a lot of stuff with health insurance in the news lately. You know, the United Healthcare CEO was murdered. There's been a lot of different things going on. I think having someone like yourself kind of explain health insurance, talk about your journey getting started, how you went from the hospitality business to something completely unrelated. I think it's going to be very relatable to people. So just to get going, if you want to talk a little bit about your journey going into health insurance and starting up your health insurance journey as an agent, that'd be great.
Absolutely. So obviously when COVID happened, it changed for a lot of people, their industries, their careers, the trajectory of where they were planning on going and moving into the future. And so coming from the hospitality business, where we literally were putting people in places and spaces together, that was all shut down. So I used to do the meetings, conferences, events, weddings, and so forth for Hilton and a couple other properties. And so when March came around and everything got shut down, we were immediately furloughed, and I could see the writing on the wall that this was not going to be a short road that we were going down, because when events started canceling, not just the ones that were in the foreseeable future, but a year out and 2 years out, and we started to see those cancel, the writing was on the wall that this was going to drastically impact a lot of people, including myself.
So the people who stuck around, just to talk about like COVID in the hotel industry, for the people who stuck around, what did that look like for their jobs? How long did they have to wait before they were back to work? I mean, those people who got furloughed, were they just out of a job?
So we were all furloughed from about March 23rd, and I know these dates very specifically because obviously it affected me. So we on the calendar we were expected to come back in June 6th to be specific, and the only people that were left on site was the executive team. So we're talking general manager, director of finance, director of revenue. So maybe like 10 people out of 2 properties where you normally have hundreds of people employed. So everybody from the ground level, from housekeeping through the meetings and events. So this is everybody.
I mean, was anybody even booking during that time as far as like hotels go?
No, so they shut everything down, right? So there's no booking. So the only people that were there were the ones that were left to kind of facilitate any, answer any calls. So you had your general manager answering phone calls for people that had reservations just for a hotel stay for one night, instead of a front desk staff or supervisor. So these guys were the only ones left on deck. And this wasn't just at the hotel that I worked at. This was across the board. And then when you think about the bigger scheme of things, the grand scale, hospitality, and specifically with what I did in events, I worked with a ton of vendors, florists, photographers, DJs, entertainment companies, and all of these other small businesses that are also affected by that, because if I'm not booking those events, I'm not calling in my vendors. And so it impacted more than just the hotels and restaurants, but also all of the other vendors that partner along with them.
Interesting. Okay. So obviously it's a weird jump going from hospitality to health insurance. I know you mentioned, okay, during that time, everybody, you get furloughed. You don't know if you're going to be going back to your job. The number one thing people are concerned about, especially during COVID with all the health concerns, is your health insurance. So how did you get into health insurance?
All right, so as a mother of 2, this resonates with me because not only am I, looking at it from a work perspective, but now I also have to make sure that my kids are covered well and so forth. And so I'm not sure if everybody's familiar, but when you're furloughed, they actually keep your insurance going, but because it's not being deducted from your paycheck, you actually have to keep it active, send a check in and pay for it on your own. So we're used to in W-2, it's garnished from our paychecks. Well, if you're not getting a paycheck, which is the case when you're furloughed, you actually still have to pay for it to keep it active. When that time came around and I had to pay for the insurance, knowing that it was super important to keep that going with kids, and we're in a health pandemic, which is the number one concern is the health and safety, and people being in the hospital and respiratory and all of those things. I started to question, one, can I afford this, but also are there other avenues out there? Just a little backstory real quick with that is, I was one of the last to get furloughed. And so by the time I got into the DES to apply for unemployment, where they had those, added extra income to help with people, I hadn't seen a paycheck for 9 weeks because I was lost in the system because they were so backed up. So not only did I have to write a check for the insurance, but I also wasn't getting any income at the time either.
That's a little bit painful. Yeah, I can only imagine, especially too, like we'll talk about being an entrepreneur and now having to write your own check. Now you literally don't have anyone writing a check and you don't know what's next for you. That's crazy. So, all right, you've been furloughed, you went through that process. What made you want to pick health insurance? I feel like for myself, there's so many different industries, like especially when I was coming out of college, there's so many different industries that people are making a lot of money in, having really great lives that you never really think of. And going from hospitality to health insurance seems like kind of a weird jump. Like, how did you get started there?
So I started shopping for insurance because I was trying to figure out if there was other avenues. And being that I've always been W-2 in corporate, didn't know that the health insurance space or agents, advisors even existed, right? We know PNC, home and auto, like State Farm and all of that stuff. But when you're W-2, you don't even know anything about this stuff. So I went online, like most people do, plugged in my information, got ambushed by telemarketers and agents and advisors and things like that. And then I came across a local divisional leader here in Phoenix. And when I was explaining to him my situation, and he was doing some information gathering and we'll say pre-qualifying, right? Let's see what her needs are, what's going on, what are the specifics, how can I help? Because it is a lot of problem solving in our industry, trying to understand the needs of people and figure out a solution, right? That's what most entrepreneurs do. Somebody has a problem, how do we resolve it? How do we help? And so he said, hey, listen, we didn't shut down. We're 1099. We have an office. You need work. And at the time I was homeschooling my kids, I learned very quickly I am not built to be a stay-at-home mom or a teacher. So kudos to all of you. But at the same time, I was like, you know what? I never would have taken a leap to go into a business, an industry that, one, I was unfamiliar with. Two, that's commission only, right? You're building your own book of business. There's nobody signing a paycheck for you. There's no benefits that are included. It was completely uncharted territory that I never would have imagined myself going in that direction had I not been put in a position where it was like, well, what am I going to do? There's nothing, you guys have an office. You're not shut down. Let's give it a shot. And so I went in and had interviewed with them, met some of the people that are there, got some information, and I love helping people. That's what I'm passionate about doing. That's what I did in the hospitality industry. When I'm putting together, let's say a wedding, for example, it's the most important day of somebody's life. It's a very emotional process. The decisions that they're making are very emotional decisions. But my job is to listen, to gather the information, and then to put together something to service that individual. Well, that skill set is very translatable into what I do now. So I thought that if I take that same skill set and apply it over here, I can help people the same way, but on a different, very, very drastically different level, right? So the worst case scenario, something that happens during an event, somebody's steak is overcooked or the event goes off with the timing being, we're running late or something like that. In the health insurance space, you're dealing with people's financials and their health, two of the most important things in their lives.
All right, so your first year in business, you just made that jump. Ben and I, we talk about entrepreneurs going to zero. In a sense, you're already at zero. COVID, I guess, in a sense, made it the perfect timing for you. So you're in your first year. What did your first 3 months look like in the business?
So I am from New York originally. I'm a go-getter. I'm a hustler.
I wonder if anybody can tell.
Yeah, right. And I talk with my hands, obviously. But my first thought was that I have two babies. My daughter was 2 at the time. My son was 8 at the time. Yes. And like I said, I homeschooled them for a little bit. And my number one priority is always going to be my family and my kids. And so if I'm going to do something, I'm going to put my all into it. I'm going to work my butt off and make it happen. So the first 3 months, there's a rite of passage that comes in our industry, and I'm not sure if you had to go through it too. But when you first get started, obviously there's a big learning curve. You're learning, all the regulations and things like that. But they want you to learn a lot of like objection handling and and learn product, but also learn through that process by making phone calls and I love people, and so I was like, you know what, guys. Let me try some things out. I think now that I understand what it is that we do, who we service, how we can help, I think I have a better way of doing this that I'm used to and I feel more comfortable with. So after a couple of weeks going through training, getting certifications, going through the big tests that we have to take, I started thinking about the people that we can help in our industry. And it kind of went off from there. So you got to think about it. During COVID, everybody's losing their jobs, they're furloughed, health insurance. There's so many different variables and moving parts. And the niche that we really help, because doing individual policies and working with small business owners, I thought about it, I'm like, well, let's think. I worked with small business owners. I didn't even put the pieces together right away, but like our DJs, florists, photographers, entertainment companies, these are all small business owners, local small business owners that are dramatically impacted by me not having a job because they're not getting work because I am unable to provide that for them. And they need health insurance too. But it wasn't even just those people going that. I thought bigger than that. I thought about all the other people that were in the same position as myself. The other catering sales managers or just sales managers in general, or anybody that is in an industry that was deeply, deeply impacted it. And how can I help? How can I be a resource? How can I provide information? So I started reaching out to people that I knew, and it just skyrocketed from there. I've already built relationships with these people where it was repeat business or repeat vendors that I worked with, and so I've already built that rapport and that know, like, trust concept with them because I've always taken good care of them. And instead of going in and pitching insurance and talking to them about what I do, I went to them first and I said, how can I help you? How can I help support you? What are you doing? How are you getting by? I talked to entertainment companies. He's a client of mine now, but he had his entertainment company. We did a ton of events together. He went into the mortgage business. Like, there's a lot of people that had to switch gears completely from what they were doing. And so I just started there with people that I knew that I could help and at the very least, be a resource and answer questions. And then it just kind of spiderwebbed from there. One of the other big things that helped, there's two. One was there was a hospitality group that was about 60 to 70,000 strong of just people in the industry that were sharing their challenges and trying to overcome things. And that was a platform that I used as to be a resource and to provide value for some of my colleagues and answer those questions. And so the first few months in business were not only, I don't want to say it in a way that makes it seem like it was self-serving, but it was very self-rewarding because not only was I able to help people, and I was also able to help my family because in doing so, by helping them and helping them navigate it, in turn, it was helping provide financially for me and my family.
Yeah, and it's to touch back on your networking. You're an amazing networker. You're a super networker. I think so many people, when they start a business, they look at their, in a sense, circle of people that they're around, and they go, okay, I feel really awkward telling my best friend about my new business. If you go into that situation, like you said, how can I serve you? Especially if you know other business owners. Other small business owners are always looking to help other small business owners out. It is that's so simple. That's such a lay-in right there. But there's so many people who will start a business, and if you're not telling everybody you're in business when you're first getting started, it is going to be such a tough time. So, all right, the first 3 months, you killed it your first year. You had a really good first year. Most people aspire to make $100,000 in their entire career. You're able to do that in your first year. That's pretty amazing. Tell me about, in a sense, what was the moment when everything clicked for you of, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have to look for another job. I'm going to make this work. This could be something that I do for a long time.
So another, like there was certain things that were like unlocked in the first few months of like these light bulbs that would go off about who I can help. And also thinking about bigger picture outside of just Arizona. So I'm licensed in 32 states. One of my, a couple of friends are nurses and respiratory therapists. And so now I'm looking at during COVID, respiratory therapy, nobody even knew what that was before. Well, COVID is a respiratory, issue. And so these guys were taking these huge, massive travel contracts and traveling all across the country to go help people. And the COVID like grants and things like that were bumping their income up where, again, they weren't qualifying for certain tax credits, reduced premiums for things, and then they were going from state to state. So they needed help too. So now it's big picture. It's like, okay, we have our small businesses here locally. Now I have people thinking about people that travel. And then I was like, this is something that's not going away. People need health insurance. They don't, events, catering, and weddings, and all those are luxury items that can go away like that. We learned that with COVID, right? Like I did great at my job at Hilton, and I had, I met my sales goals and I did all the right things, but my job was not secure. So I had no control over it. I had no control over losing benefits, my job, my 401k, any of those things, my life insurance that they provided. Whereas now I have control over that. My schedule, my time with my family, my kids, prioritizing my health and things like that that I would not have at a traditional job. So not only do I love what I do because I can help people, but it also offers me the freedom and flexibility to pour back into my family. And so at that point, when I realized that I had, I could do both and incorporate both too. For the first year or two, anybody will tell you when they're starting a business, you're trading in your 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 for 24/7 and 7 days.
We say that all the time.
8 days a week, right? There's not
Yeah.
even 8 days in a week, but it is like that. And so I had to find ways to incorporate my kids. And so I brought my kids into the office and I did objection handling with my son because he'd tell me no for certain things. I'm like, well, why do you feel that way? Tell me, what's the problem? How can I resolve it for you? And so once I realized, okay, cool, I can make good money, I can help people and incorporate my family, that was it for me. And punching in and out, like, I don't think I'd ever be able to do that again realistically. So I'll always make it work regardless. So, we have changes coming up in the industry. A lot of people are skeptical about like what that's going to look like. I welcome change. Challenge accepted, and we pivot and we see what we can do from there.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of change coming to health insurance, the Medicare side, the under 65 side. Let's talk about that a little bit because let's talk about, can you explain to people what prior authorization is? I think this is a pretty hotly contested topic. Can you just talk a little bit to what prior authorization is?
Sure. So here's the thing is that when you talk to like a neighbor or a friend or a family member and they're like, well, I had this covered or I had that covered or this isn't covered or that, there are hundreds of plans out there and they can be structured in all different shapes, sizes, etc. Prior authorization is just getting authorization from the insurance company so you can move forward with a procedure or a treatment plan. It's making sure that you have the coverage and the plan that's adequate enough to cover those things that you need. And just taking that extra step to get authorization just ensures that there's no surprises down the road where you see extra bills or things that aren't covered. It gives the provider peace of mind that the insurance is going and willing to pay out. And then also should give the individual peace of mind, even if it's an extra step that they don't want to do, but just that knowing like that conversation has been had and you have that to fall back on.
Yeah, for sure. So I think prior authorization, like I said, it's been in the news a lot lately about what it is. I think a lot of people would be surprised if your health insurance, you would be shocked what your health insurance premium is if prior authorization didn't exist. If every procedure got approved immediately, one, everybody talks about their doctor like they're looking out for them and that their doctor does no wrong, but hospitals and doctors are trying to get paid as well. And prior authorization also assures that you actually need that surgery. Especially on the Medicare side, there was a huge case of fraud, actually here in Arizona, about there was a group of doctors that were giving out skin grafts to people who didn't need them. It was like $1.2 million in skin graft fraud. And because Medicare, if you're on original Medicare, doesn't have prior authorization, those doctors see a blank check and they're just going to, in a sense, bill for as much as they can take.
Yeah, and that's always been a challenge, I think, when it comes to That goes back to, in my opinion, to setting expectations also with clients on what some of these things are and educating them, because they understand it and they're educated on why there are these processes and procedures, and it's there to protect them, it's there to protect the insurance company, it's there to, I mean, just make sure that everybody is dotting their I's and crossing their T's. We see it all the time where, we'll see doctors' offices that will max out what they bill an insurance company, and they don't know what the patient's insurance plan looks like, and they could be responsible for a lot more money. And then that's why we also see cash pay a lot for certain things too, because then they get the money in hand right then and there. They don't have to go through negotiations or pre-authorization with the insurance companies. So there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to things. Prior authorizations are one of them. Prescriptions, also, I'm sure you've run into a ton of challenges with prescriptions where you can have a single prescription that costs thousands of dollars, but there might be a generic or more cost-effective version of that prescription that person may be eligible for. So it's just a lot, and it's always important for anybody to just do their due diligence, talk to your advisor or agent, to run and bounce things off, look for other resources for things. But the prior authorization, I think, has more meaning, like you had said, and it is necessary.
Yeah, I mean, with how the U.S. health system is, that's just the way it is. With the prescriptions, because I think I probably get more questions about prescriptions, and I'm guessing you do too, than actual medical procedures. Because you're taking your prescriptions every day. That's a monthly cost that you're going to have to pay for in one way or the other. With prescriptions, especially why is one prescription $1,000 when it treats blood pressure, and there's another prescription that's 60 cents. Well, brand names to generics is a very interesting game. They might look like the same thing. You might not be able to pronounce either prescription's name still, but a brand name prescription is going to be something that is manufactured at a really high cost. A pharmaceutical company still has all the patents for, so they haven't made a generic for it yet. And that's why you're going to see something that's thousands and thousands of dollars. Ozempic right now, when it was just Ozempic and there was nothing else, and they had that patent, they'd send it out there, and Ozempic was hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Well, once that patent ran out, semaglutide came out, which is the generic version of that, and it's a lot cheaper. I think too many people think that their doctors just know best right off the bat, and that their doctor isn't trying to make a living as well, and prescribing a medication that's a brand name that's going to make more money for that doctor, and they're going to get their kickback from the pharmaceutical company, is something to look out for. So especially when you're sitting down with your doctor and you're having that conversation, if you know that your plan covers a generic, there's nothing wrong with asking your doctor, hey, is there a cheaper option? Because a lot of the times, there might be a generic that's going to treat you just as well, that your insurance covers a lot better than maybe that brand name prescription.
Yeah, those are conversations that I have too. And then on the flip side of it, every once in a while there's going to be a client that says, oh, I've tried it. And so that's the question that I'll ask. Did you try the brand? Oh, yeah, it didn't work for me. Okay, cool. All right, so you tried other versions of it, and those just did not settle right with you. So then that's the direction. But I always challenge my clients to question that first before just agreeing to it.
And it's not the role of trying to play doctor by any means, but at the same time, with medical care, it's extremely expensive. If you just let somebody pick what you want and they don't know your financial situation, there's a chance you're going to end up with an $800 prescription when maybe a generic could have done 99% of the same effectiveness at $5. All right, so you've been doing this for 5 years now. You had an amazing first year. I think a lot of people, they stagnate after. If you have a great first year, really the hardest year is going to be the next year, because you expect to have that same exact growth. You went from 0 to 100,000. Now it's like, well, now I'll go from 100,000 to 500,000. Obviously, that's not realistic goals. So going into year 5 for yourself, what's kind of the strategy right now? I know that you've added a virtual assistant. What's kind of your growth plan moving forward?
So for the first 2 to 3 years, obviously, I'm getting my feet wet. There's different challenges that I'm learning to overcome, and there's always going to be continued education and learning and opportunities, because things change, right, in our industries. There's things that are out of our control, and we have to learn more about it. So as I've gotten more comfortable, I have learned to delegate. And so that's where the virtual assistant comes in. So being an entrepreneur and a business owner, and coming from, again, going back to the hospitality, W-2 corporate, I had all of that stuff set up for me, right? We had an admin there, we had, budgets, and we had marketing plans, and we had action plans, and we had goals, and we had all that stuff, right? But when we're on our own, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And once we realize that we're juggling all the hats, which I think on average might come around to year two, depending on your industry, of course. You need to start delegating and focusing on what your strong suits are if you want to continue to maintain and or grow. So bringing in a VA to handle all the administrative back-end duties, super, super important. She is fantastic. She handles all the social media. She handles follow-up, welcome emails, some of my networking things that I do. And so a lot of people have become familiar with her because they know she's my right hand. And so that was huge because taking some of those tasks off of my plate allowed me more time to focus more on the customer service side of things, and also the ability to talk about clients and go through claims with them and help them navigate some of the challenges that they might be having. And so that's what I'm really passionate about. What I love is because that also helps with client retention, right? The customer service, the follow-up, the little touches. I send monthly newsletters, tips and tricks on how to, utilize your telemedicine, or if you have an accident injury, some parts of your plan that might help out and things like that, just to keep people educated and refresh them on what they have. And then, of course, as you know, when they're eligible for Medicare and aging off to 65, I do a nice little introduction over to you there to make sure that that's a nice, smooth transition, and they don't feel like, oh God, now that I'm turning 65, what do I do? It's like, nope, you're going to go talk to Mac and he'll take care of you.
Yeah, and just for anybody who's wondering about health insurance or Medicare, how you make money in a sense. So the reason why client retention is so important, because you get paid on that client the first year that you have them. Well, then they become what's called renewal income. So you, in a sense, are going to get paid for that client as long as they're with you on that policy, or that you're the one who's written their policy. So I call it get rich slow, because you might start off with a very small book of business. You might write 100 your first year, and if you write 100 your second year, it's going to eventually be that snowball effect where you have a nice renewal income coming in after a few years. But it's definitely get rich slow at the beginning.
Agreed. And another reason, again, going back to why I know this is where I'm meant to be, is when COVID happened and everything stopped and we weren't getting a paycheck, the residual income is huge. That sense of security, knowing that I take care of my people, so they're not going to go anywhere. Obviously, there's circumstances, employer coverage and, changes in life and things like that they might leave. But for the most part, if I know that I'm helping those, my clients, and I'm maintaining those relationships when they have friends, family members, kids, things like that are needing to explore options as well, I know that I'll be their go-to. And so as I, might potentially lose a client based off of, again, an employer plan, they're starting a W-2 job, they're covered for free. I mean, I can't argue that, right? I'm always going to let people know if there's a better option or if it's a better position for them. But that residual and the retention and the referrals that you get from your clients, I think is the best way to do business, because you're building these relationships and getting to know people on a personal level, and all the meanwhile you are being able to provide for your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with a lot of people, they wonder, everybody's looking for this, what can I do marketing wise that's going to get me 100 clients? What can I do that's going to blow up on social media so you can grow fast? Referrals are the most consistent way to grow your business. If you do a good job with one client, you do the follow-up, they're going to refer you to their friends and family. And especially in an industry like health insurance, referrals are the golden source. It is way easier to work with someone's friend, mom, brother, sister, whatever it is, than having to go cold market to someone and convince them that they want to do business with you.
And that's why 3 weeks into the business, when I went from having to make 300 to 500 dials a day, and they assume that you are, a scammer or something like that, and then you have to convince them or, educate them that, no, this is what I do, I'm licensed. But a lot of times in those systems where you're making those cold calls and things like that, you have all the objection handling that you have to get over first before you could even start to have a conversation. And then also get them to, trust you. Because there are, and especially in a lot of industries, there are a lot of people that are either out for just a paycheck, or they don't have the person's best interest in mind. And so we see that happen a lot in the insurance industry, where I'll talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, this agent signed me up on something. I don't even know what it is. I didn't get my cards. I don't know anything about it. They're taking my premiums, or I had a question about a claim or checking a doctor and my agent's nowhere to be found. Or, I mean, and this is super common, is that because, like you mentioned, it's really hard to get a business up and running in the first year, get rich slow, right? So some people don't have the time to put into that because they have other things or expenses, and it's easier to go back to a W-2 position where you know you're getting a paycheck. So then they try to reach out to that agent, and they may have been doing it for a few months, 6 months, maybe a year tops, and then they leave the industry altogether.
Yeah, I think the average life expectancy in the insurance industry is 3 years. And that's not sticking around for 3 years, that's leaving at 3 years. So even if somebody does make it to year 3, that doesn't mean they're doing well in it. That just means they're surviving. So I think you're right. We run into clients all the time where I used to have this person who helped me and now I don't know what they're doing. And that's nothing against that agent if they're now doing something else. I mean, eventually you have to leave a business if it's not making you a living. But no, I totally understand. The insurance industry is not for the faint of heart. So it definitely is kind of a dog-eat-dog world out there for sure.
That it is. And I think the customer service side of things, especially in the under 65 arena, is lacking because I help my clients out with claims all the time, right? So like there's so many things you can go through and set the expectations. And you talked about the, authorization and things like that. But there's so much, even if you go through the details of what the coverage looks like, or, and you tell them what their premiums are and their co-pays and their deductibles, there are so many little details and exclusions and all of these other things that if your client calls you, and I've talked to so many agents that they're like, oh God, this person's calling me and they don't answer or whatever the case is. If you can't have those tough conversations with your clients and be able to at least try to show some sympathy, or if you've been through it, empathy, in my case, because I went through some stuff with my mom health-wise, but if you can't show sympathy when somebody's struggling, trying to understand a claim, or they have medical bills and you can't be there for them to lean on and be a resource for them, whether that's, taking a look at the claim and seeing, if something's billed correctly, and you might not get it right every time, but then that's, again, hey, let me find out for you. I'll make a couple phone calls, or maybe there's a resource for that, when it comes to prescriptions, like, oh, this is going to cost you $800 on your insurance plan. Have you ever looked into GoodRx? So being there for your clients after the fact, I think is something that is severely lacking in our industry.
For sure. And I think that we talk about this a lot, and we've talked about with some other guests, is if you have sales on your breath when you're talking to your clients, it comes off as really desperate. Everyone knows, are you going to be someone who makes a sale, and then the second I need something, are you going to disappear? You can tell, in a sense, who those agents are. So having the, in a sense, outlook of clients of, oh, my client is calling me, not, oh my gosh, what do I have to do now? But how can I serve them? How can I help them? Because in the long term, even if you want to look at it from a selfish way, that's a much better way to get referrals than not answering that phone call, not talking to your clients, or doing stuff like that. So let's pivot real quick. Let's break down a medical bill, because I think this is really interesting. I talk to my clients all the time where they go, oh, I just had this wrist surgery and it was $300,000. Well, you take a look at a medical bill, and then there's something called an insurance discount. Can you kind of break down what an insurance discount is?
Yes. So every facility, doctor's office, et cetera, they negotiate contracted rates with the insurance companies, and those can change. So this is where, again, in self-defense, but not just self-defense, but just to let people understand this, nobody's lying to you if they tell you one thing and then the next year it's something else. I mean, maybe in some cases, but no, if you know your agent well enough, there are changes that happen regularly, right? So that's why we also have open enrollment timeframes so people can make those adjustments and changes. But the provider discount or contracted rate is what it's pre-negotiated between the insurance carrier and the facility or doctor's office. That can vary between different networks. So we don't know what that is. It's for some reason, it's like this sacred number that these doctor's offices won't give us. And I'm like, what's your contracted rate with United? Well, once you bill it, then we'll see what that looks like.
Yeah, I think there's so many people who go, if your doctor's office says to you, we don't know until you bill it, they're actually not lying. Because that person at the front desk probably has no idea what it's going to be because their billing's done on the backside. If you get a wrist surgery and it's $300,000, you'll see that, and then you'll see the insurance discount, I don't know, $280,000. If you were even to pay cash, they would give you a cash price. There's no one in the world who's paying $300,000 for that surgery. If they looked at it, the hospital's going to write off the difference. That's why they charge that huge amount, is so they can write off the difference. So when they do their books at the end of the year, they have these huge write-offs to put against their profits, because no one's paying $300,000 for that wrist surgery. Your insurance comes in and it knocks it down to $20,000, let's say, before anything even kicks in. Or if you're a cash pay patient, they're going to say, all right, you're going to pay $15,000 for that. No one's paying the $300,000. That's why I love when that bill comes through and my clients go, "Oh, it was a $300,000 surgery." It actually wasn't. It's just that the hospital does it that way so they can have this huge write-off. So, all right. So we've gotten through the insurance discount. Now, in a sense, let's talk really basic. So you see a huge thing on your health insurance plan. It's called your deductible. A lot of people make the comment, "Oh my gosh, my plan didn't cover anything." Kind of break down what a deductible is.
Okay, love that question. Love that question. And the reason why is that a lot of people, when they're shopping for health insurance, they're price shopping. And everything, cost and coverage are correlated, right? Things that are more expensive, they're typically higher in value. And so if you want a very low premium, so you're trying to save money in your monthly expenses, generally speaking, you're going to have a higher deductible, or vice versa. On most plans, and I'm talking very much ACA, marketplace specific, most plans, HMO specifically, high deductible, the HDHP plans, you are going to have to satisfy that deductible before the insurance pays for everything or anything. So there's different structures, again, so many different plans out there. So you're going to have some plans that have a high deductible, lower monthly payment. Okay, when you have those plans, it's not that nothing is covered. You just have to satisfy that deductible first. So if you rarely use your insurance, you feel like your insurance is paying nothing, because if you're never going to hit that deductible, then you are paying your premiums and you're paying for everything out of pocket. On the next side, you'll have some plans like kind of like your silver, your mid-tier. Those plans, typically, you'll see a higher premium on those plans, maybe a lower deductible, maybe some co-pays for simple things like doctor's office visits, so primary care specialists, but you might still be responsible for labs, x-rays, imaging, et cetera, until you hit your deductible. So those are the details that you have to look at in your coverage. So when I talk to a client, I'm asking them what they're using the insurance for. What are your priorities? If you go in every 3 to 4 months and you do blood work and you're getting some labs done and you see a specialist for whatever it may be, you don't want the lowest costing plan, because you're going to end up with all of this out of pocket and it's going to feel like nothing is covered. Of course, as you go up in cost, your deductible comes down and there's going to be more coverage for you. So it's all going to be correlated. So understanding what that looks like ahead of time. And then again, of course, there's more to it than that, because once you hit a deductible, then you typically will have a co-insurance where you're responsible for like a percentage, 20%, 30%, let's say, and then the insurance company picks up the difference until you hit your max out of pocket. So at the end of the day, if you are using your insurance more frequently, I would suggest a higher monthly payment, lower deductible, and then always look at that out-of-pocket max. If you never use your insurance and you just want that lower monthly payment, you might even be better off cash paying versus having them bill it through the insurance if you're only going in once or twice, because what we just said it before, what they might bill the insurance, they're maxing that out, and you're going to be responsible for that until you hit your deductible, whereas cash pay, they might negotiate it down about 70% in some cases.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, is just know the plan you're on. I think there's just so many people who have no idea what their health insurance is, because it is intimidating. It is hard to look at that document and go, what's going on here? Your summary of benefits is, it seems straightforward to someone who looks at them every single day, but it'd be like someone asking me to wire in an outlet. I have no idea what's going on when I do that. So I think that's why it's so important to sit down with someone who knows, okay, what is a deductible? Like you said, how much do you go to the doctor? How much are you going to actually use your plan? Is it going to cover, maybe you go to the doctor 2 times a year and you find a plan that covers those 2 visits before your deductible. So even though you're on a lower plan, it does cover something at least. But yeah, I think that's really important, just to know your plan and sit down with someone who's going to know what's going on with your insurance.
Absolutely. And all the plans are different shapes and structures and sizes and all of those things. So, and I'll just touch on one of my pet peeves a little bit is when somebody, and I'm sure you might run into this too, is when somebody says, oh, well, my friend this or my neighbor this. And here's the deal is that everybody is different, uses the insurance for different things, has different taxable household sizes and incomes that might affect their premiums. So I might be quoting you a plan that's $800-900 for your family. You guys are healthy, you're active, it's good coverage, and then the family next door might be paying $250 for their plan, but they're on a marketplace plan and they have lower income and there's other variables to consider, and it could be the same network. That's the thing. That's the thing is, oh, well, I was on United and I had this experience, or I was on Blue Cross and I had this experience. Well, the experience is generally not related to the actual carrier itself. It's the structure of the plan and managing the expectations.
So someone who's trying to get into the health insurance industry, they're at their job, they're in a similar situation to you. Okay, I'm at my job, maybe they weren't laid off, but they've gotten to the point where they want to try and take that leap to be self-employed and try this out. What would be some advice and some things that you would tell them to think of before they even get started?
Great question. So, and they've changed a lot of this with the offices when people are coming in, just to lay out very clear expectations, because we are 1099, we are self-employed. So when I walked in the door over there to get started initially, I was like, all right, where's my desk? Where's my stuff? And it's like, no. You are self-employed. You bring your own stuff. Like, we'll help you with a couple of things here and there. But that was a big reality check. I'm like, oh, I don't have anything. Like, I'm starting from scratch here. So I would say, it's very hard to take that leap if you don't have some kind of financial savings. And I'm not talking about a ton of money, just enough to make sure that you have an adequate workspace is one of the most important things, right? So obviously your laptop, your forms of communication, just your basic office stuff getting started. Obviously you can add to that as you come along. But having that extra money too, there's licenses that are required, right? All of this stuff costs money. So if you come in thinking you're going to make money day one, and you don't have any money kind of stored or stashed, and again, I'm not talking about a lot, maybe a couple grand, just enough to get you started. So that was one of the big things. And if you're going to do it, go all in. This is not a part-time position. This is not something that you can help people with their health insurance while I'm doing catering sales for Hilton. I would not be able to do both positions. You have to put everything into it and you have to trust it. And just like anything else, what you get out of it is what you put into it, right? So even with the networking, if for people that just show up and just expect referrals and expect business and all of those things, if you're not taking time building your relationships and the rapport and educating yourself, continued education is huge. When somebody asks you a question, you need to be able to answer it. And if you don't answer it, this is a huge piece of advice. If you don't know the answer to the question, go find out. Do your homework, do some research, go through the brochures. Do not tell somebody something that they want to hear just because you're trying to move on to the next thing. Because in our industry, with it being as regulated as it is and compliant, and you're dealing with people's health and their finances, if you don't know that answer, go find it. And that is, I think, so important because there's so much misinformation. And if you put anything in writing, right? Anything in writing where you offer something or you tell somebody something is covered and it's not, and you have that in writing, you can lose your license. It's really important. Stay compliant. Keep busy, make sure you're doing your follow-up and don't give up. Definitely in the insurance industry, but in most industries and being self-employed, you are going to have these great months and great weeks and all of that stuff. And then you're going to have weeks and months that, things aren't good. Don't take your foot off the gas.
Yeah, I remember, so Ben and I, we had an interesting opportunity with United Healthcare, and we went up to Wyoming and we made 50 grand a piece in 1 month. And it was like, oh my gosh, like we are going to make this happen. And then that was in December during annual enrollment. And the very next month in January, I think we wrote like 2 applications. And we just had written like 150 applications a piece, like in just a few days, or just like a month and a half. And then we literally followed up with a 2. And it's like, okay, we're coming off our all-time high, and now all of a sudden there's 2 applications, and it's that moment of, okay, did I take my foot off the gas? Am I getting high on my laurels? Like, you can very quickly have a great year one and then everything starts falling apart. Are you losing clients? Are they coming in the front door and then going out the back door? So yeah, I think that's very important, especially as you get started. Just don't give up. Keep your foot on the gas pedal. Work really hard for 3 years and then take a look at what's going on. I think too many people try and get started in a business and they want to have the perfect logo and they want to have the perfect, I don't know, branding, and they need to know everything about the industry. I think that too many people take too much time to learn and they need to just go do. Because when you're sitting down with someone, like you said, if you don't know the answer, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, that's a great question. I'll find you the answer, and follow up with that answer. Don't just let it go by the wayside of just because you didn't know.
Yes, agreed, very much so. And that's where, when I first started as well, I need to know everything. That's who I am. I need to know everything. I printed out the brochures. I'm reading through everything. I'm doing all the certs and all of that stuff. And one great piece of advice was like, that will all come. You just need to start talking to people, and you can reference things. And as long, it's about, I think, before knowing all the details, know your stuff, right? It's going to take time to learn everything. I'm still learning, right? As something comes up, I'm like, oh God, I never had that happen before. Let me go find out. That's always going to happen in this, especially in this industry. But getting out there, letting people know what you do, why you do it. Your why is really important too. Are you doing it just for the revenue and the sale? Or are you doing it because you genuinely want to help people? And people will be able to feel that energy. It's the same thing like we were talking about in, I think, meeting last week or something, that when you're on the phone with somebody, people can feel that smile. Like if you're talking and you have that energy, that even if you're on a phone call, that can be received versus somebody that's like, hey, how can I help you? Okay, what's going on? Okay, right? So like even tonality with things and stuff like that, that makes a huge difference in how people perceive you and whether or not they feel comfortable with you, and then whether or not they're going to refer you.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think with someone who's starting out, obviously you need to get out there and do it. Eventually, I have this belief with sales that no matter what industry, like if Medicare disappeared tomorrow, I could get into any industry and be able to sell it within a few days. Learn the basics of the product and start doing it. I think that too many people start thinking about what they need to do. And eventually, if you're in sales and you know how to sell and you know how to talk to people and treat them well, and you make sure that the product or whatever you're doing is benefiting them, I think there's so much less knowledge you actually need than most people think to get started.
Agreed, especially in our industries too, because it's so much information. We talk prescriptions, we talk doctors, we talk, conditions, hospitals, doctors, all of these things that we talk about. And it is a lot. And so again, there's resources and guides to fall back to if you have questions or need to do any homework on it. And this is a big testimonial to networking as well, and why it's so important in your business, especially when you're getting started. Networking is the ability to build relationships, right? You're creating relationships, you're providing value for your clients, friends, family, etc. And so many times in a sales role, why wouldn't you, if you're in a sales role, your job is to build those relationships like you do in networking. So if you hate networking and you hate talking to people, you're not really you're gonna have some big hurdles to overcome, right? Like that's what the business is all about. It's all about getting to know your clients. And so if you can get over that whole like, oh, I hate networking, it's so tedious, and the concept of it and all this other stuff, you treat networking, whether it's at like my kid's soccer game, right? So kids soccer game, a PTO meeting, or regular networking things that we do like BNI and AM Spirit and all the other chambers and other avenues that are out there. If we stop treating it like it's a chore and have enjoyment and work it like, you get out of it what you put into it. And so I treat it's part of my marketing plan, right? So I'm putting money into it. I have skin in the game. So I'm going to put everything into it. I am going to treat it as a part of my marketing plan. It's an investment. It's the same way if I do business cards and mailers and flyers, but those are getting me cold leads, right? That's not even guaranteed warm referrals. Who knows what I'm going to get out of that, but I'm putting money towards it. So some of us will put money towards Facebook ads and all these other things. And I'm not knocking any of that. Depends on the industry. It's different for everybody, right? But it's my sales team. And I'm not going to miss my meetings or prioritize other things over that because this is it's my sales team. I'm teaching and training and educating people on people that I'm looking for, that I want to work with, and that I can help. And those people that I've built relationships with in those groups are actively listening for people that I could potentially help. I wouldn't miss my sales meeting with my sales team if I was in a different industry. So that's how I treat my business. So I would say anybody that knocks networking or doesn't see the importance or the value in it, if you are self-employed or starting a business, especially if you are insurance and real estate where it's saturated, you need to do something like that to grow your business and to make it sustainable.
Yeah, and I think people underestimate the power of a local presence. I think too many people, when they look at Facebook marketing or any type of social media ads, immediately everybody starts to think nationally. The people, especially in health insurance, you're pretty much only going to work with people pretty local. You obviously will get those referrals who are out of state, and we carry different licenses in different states, but a lot of your business is going to come from the local area that you live in. So if the only thing you think of for Facebook is going to be running a Facebook ad and not Facebook groups, I don't know, local groups here in Scottsdale, you're missing a lot on that local presence. If you're not partnering up with other local businesses and networking with them to, hey, how can I help you? Okay, here's also the clients that I'm looking for. Find a power partner who has a lot in common. For us, someone like yourself who works with under 65 health insurance is a great power partner because we know that you're going to treat your clients well, and once they turn 65, we're going to continue that on. So it's finding those power partners that you know are going to help grow your business, and they know exactly who you're looking for, and they trust that you're doing the same thing for their business.
Absolutely. And then to piggyback off of that as well, having resources available to be able to provide value for your clients, but also for those, because you had brought up the question about anybody new looking to get into the industry. Again, coming from W-2, corporate, anybody that's transitioning and trying to go this route, you don't know if you don't come from an entrepreneurial background, whether that's friends, family members, and things like that. It is very foreign territory. I knew nothing about it. So when I started, there's certain steps in the process, right? It's getting out there and letting people know what you do. So, and then learning product and all these other things, right, that come as you're doing that. And then it's learning how to, follow up and communicate with clients, and your, prospecting and all of that, and objection handling, right? That's all the first year or two, and really getting your feet wet. By like years 3 and 4, you should have enough knowledge to be able to find other ways to be able to help and partner with people. But those first years, bookkeeping, taxes, again, finding like in networking, you find your good promo marketing people. These are people that you'll not only potentially be your power partners, they're going to also help you grow your business. I don't know anything about bookkeeping. That was the first thing that I delegated. I said, I don't want to do any of the administrative stuff. I don't even know it. So I delegated that out. And then it's like, oh, this is foreign territory with taxes, right? We're self-employed. We're 1099. Like, what does that look like? I normally just file like W-2 and we're on our way.
If you are starting a business, the number one thing you should do is find a good tax person. Because you are going to, if you don't have your LLC set up, you haven't talked to a lawyer and gotten everything set up, you are going to pay so much more in taxes than you think. You made $100,000 your first year and 40% of it's gone. You need to figure out why 40% of it's gone. So if you're starting a business, please, please, please get someone who is good at taxes.
And to second that, I would say also somebody that works and is familiar with small business owners and things like that, because there's, write-offs to look at and tax breaks to look at and things like that you, again, would not know. So that's why I brought that up, because we were talking about like new, getting into the industry. And then some of those other things like, I have my VA, which you had mentioned before. So now I have somebody to handle the administrative side of things. Some people will hire somebody to handle the social media, because those are some tasks that as you grow your business, they're a little bit more tedious and time consuming. And if your main role in your business, you can't duplicate yourself necessarily depending on what you do, or if we have to be licensed, right? So I can't have my VA talk about products, but you can do my social media and content and all of that stuff. I need to be the one talking about like products and looking at claims and things like that, because I'm the licensed agent. So I need to, as I build my business and I have more clients, I need to free up the time from all the social media and taxes and bookkeeping, delegate that out so I can focus on how I can actually help people.
And as a business owner, your time is best served selling. If you're having to worry about doing those administrative duties, obviously the first few years, you're just trying to get your income up. You have to wear everything. You have to be the bookkeeper. You have to be the person who posts on social media. You have to do those things at the beginning. But eventually, when you're not as strapped on cash and your business is in a growth phase where, okay, now I'm surviving. I'm making sure the mortgage is paid. I don't have a chance, in a sense, to lose my house anymore. That's when you need to start delegating those tasks that are going to take up your time so you can be best served being out there and selling, especially when it comes to insurance products where you need someone who's licensed. You can't just have a virtual assistant talk about those type of things with people. So I think that's really great. Anybody who's looking in the business, make sure you're doing those things. Get into it, dive in head first, and don't give up. So if you had to rewind 5 years, you're back in the first step, but you know everything that you know today, what would be the first thing that you do?
I threw money at a ton of things because I just didn't know what would stick, right? And so there are certain things like I would have probably just skipped and then gone right into the networking. And even though I did start doing that pretty soon into the business, I was still throwing money at a lot of other things, whether it's
what were some of those things that you were trying to spend money on?
So did a lot of like paper type of things, I'd print brochures and pamphlets and things like that. And then there was, I did paid ads for social media, but I'd say the biggest, and not everybody's going to agree with me on this one, but buying leads. And the reason why I say that is because, and I want to talk about this because again, one of the biggest things, if it's somebody that's like a brand new person that I'm talking to and it's like kind of a referral, but not like so-and-so, 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 right? So they don't really know me. They always tell me that they made the mistake of putting in their information and they get spam called and all of that stuff. This is the back side of it. Lead vendors will offer exclusive leads or shared leads and things like that. And they create landing pages. So these landing pages, you're searching, health insurance in Arizona or whatever that looks like. You put in your name, your email, blah, blah, blah. Now you get a million phone calls, right? And we get a lot of these calls. It could be, I got a call from Medicare actually the other day. But, and I was like, I got 25 years, folks, like relax. But essentially by the time you get to them, even though you're thinking like, oh, I got this, a lead dropped into my CRM, I'm going to give them a ring. They've already been called by 50 or something people or 100 or whatever that looks like. They're already over it. They don't want to deal with it. They don't trust you because they don't know you. There hasn't been rapport built or anything, and you're the 100th person that's called them in the last hour. So in the beginning, it's kind of like a rite of passage because it does help a little bit with the objection handling. But I remember in the beginning, I'd be busy and I was doing great with referrals and I would slow down and all of a sudden I had to throw money at everything because I'm like, kind of like it'd be similar to what you experienced, right? You had a big month and then the next month it's like quiet and I'm like, oh my God. And then so I'm like, I'm going to throw this into my Facebook and I'm going to go buy leads and do all this stuff. And then business would come back again and I'd be too busy to even manage the things that I threw money at. So if you are good at something, I guess the piece of advice I'd give for that and what my takeaway is if you're good at something and you know it works, stick with it. Don't panic. It goes back to the whole keep your foot on the gas type of thing. You'll see these waves and stuff like that. But what I've learned is it's going to be fine. I don't need to just start throwing money at things that I know I'm good at networking. I'm good at referrals and relationship building and working in the community. And that is a skill set that I have. I got back into that dialer one time and somebody told me to F off because I was probably the 100th person that called them and I was like, yep, this is not my way of doing business. So moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. We had our same experience with leads. If you enter in your information on that website, it might say, as an insurance agent, they might say that it's an exclusive lead, but from the consumer side, you type your phone number, name, and email in there. That phone number, name, and email is getting sent to 20 to 50 different people, and they are all going to start calling you. If you think you're going to find health insurance that way, you're crazy. The best way is to go on Google, ask a friend if they have a person who does health insurance, and work with someone local.
Agreed.
So going back to that question, so if you had to start over, what would be the first thing that you did?
I would dive right into the networking stuff, and also what we were talking about before was not worrying as much about product and getting out there. I did it a little bit quicker than most, but what I actually did is I spent more time outside of that studying things. it was overwhelming. It took away time from my kids and my family. I was in the office like 70, 80 hours a week, and I was bringing my kids with me into the office 6 a.m. Saturday mornings and things like that, because I thought I mean, I guess, I don't know if I would do it differently, but I would maybe prioritize. But then I mean, it's kind of a question that I had a good start in the beginning, and so it's really a matter of like what I was throwing money at versus changing how I did things, because if you don't start off like gun ho and doing that, it's really hard to get started. You've really got to put everything in.
Yeah, I definitely agree. There is a time sacrifice when you're starting a business. Like yourself, you had 2 kids. I mean, that's time away from your family. For myself, I was lucky enough to get into it young enough to where my expenses weren't super high, but my wife and I weren't seeing each other a ton. It was, hey, I'm going to be calling people till 7, 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, and then maybe we'll have an hour together before we go to bed. There's a lot of time sacrifice, especially when you're getting started. And I think that's another thing people don't realize is when you start a business, the only way you get paid is if you make the money. So if you're going to sit there and say, oh, well, I'll just work a little bit less today, every hour in a sense you don't work is money you're not getting paid. And I think that's really tough at the beginning to separate, and for some people to be able to take the time away from their business and prioritize family, prioritize their marriage, the things that are actually important over the business. But there is a component at the same time of you have to grind at the beginning.
If you don't, that's a tricky question, because it's one of those things that like I have been like not reprimanded, but kind of criticized for the amount of time that I spend engaged in work activities, whether it be networking, whether it be answering emails and things like that. And I think what I love about being a small business owner and self-employed and all the networking is that we all can relate to one another. And I find that if you don't have those people that you can share these kind of stories with, and you go to somebody that's like, oh, you're always working, especially in the beginning, or somebody that doesn't understand what you have to do to get this running. If I didn't do what I did, I don't know if I'd be where I'm at. You know what I mean? So it does take sacrifice and hard work in the beginning. And some people might say that, you know, they wouldn't do it that way but also at the same time, like, you almost have to. So but the quicker, I will say this, the quicker that you do it, you know, diving off versus waiting 6 months before you start, you know, putting the effort and the time in. You know, I was able to grow my business exponentially in the first 3 months versus struggling for 3 months and then being like, oh crap, I gotta do something. And then put my foot on the gas.
All right. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think people are going to take away a lot. One, if anything, just about health insurance, and that, hey, this is how a deductible works. This is why I'm getting thrown around on prior authorization right now. I think that people are going to take a lot from that. But if someone wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
So I do have my website. So it is yourhealthcoveragellc.com. There's also an agent website that is ushagent.com/Caitlin Witte, and then that's spelled CAITLINWITTE. Cell phone, best way to contact me. Feel free to text and or call 480-589-1756.
All right. And all of our information will be in the show notes as well. We'll have our social media down there, and then we'll have, obviously, her phone number and email and everything for that. But thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I hope people got a lot out of this show.
Awesome. Great to be here. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.